Welcome back, everyone, to the Religious Studies Podcast. Today, we're taking a deep dive into the world of religion and media. And before we get started, just a quick reminder that although our podcast is AI-generated, everything has been meticulously fact-checked by our expert in religion and media.
Absolutely.
So when you hear religion and media, what immediately springs to mind? I'm betting it's something like a viral TikTok discussing prayer, or maybe you're thinking of the really intricate symbolism in the latest hit TV series.
Well, you're spot on. Most of the current research on religion and media is really drawn to these contemporary examples like social media, movies, video games, the list goes on. And scholars like Stig Sharvard, who came up with that theory of mediatization of religion, or even Douglas Cowan and Lauren Dawson, who are real pioneers in the study of online religion, all of them are focusing on how religion is actually lived and experienced in this very modern media-filled world.
Yeah, it's definitely a fascinating area to explore. And all these modern examples are incredibly intriguing. But here's where it gets a bit more interesting. What if I told you that this focus on the contemporary is really just skimming the surface? What if this relationship between religion and media goes much deeper and stretches way back in human history?
You're absolutely right. Scholars like Birgit Meyer and David Morgan, they argue that separating religion and media is like trying to understand a bird without its wings. What they're getting at is that religion has always been mediated.
Okay, I'm going to need you to unpack that a little bit for me. What exactly does it mean for religion to be mediated? It sounds a bit abstract.
Okay, think of it this way. Religion, it doesn't just exist in a vacuum. It needs forms and practices to communicate and transmit its ideas and beliefs and rituals. And these forms and practices, whether we're talking about a physical gathering or maybe a sacred text or even a song, those are the media. They're like the vehicles that actually carry the religious meaning.
So even way back, in ancient times when people would gather around a fire for a ritual, that fire, the stories they told, the way they moved, all of that acted as a type of media.
Precisely. And if we delve even deeper, and explore human evolution and cognition, we begin to see just how intertwined our brains, our culture, and media actually are. There's this fascinating research by people like Merlin Donald, who argue that our capacity for symbolic thinking, our very ability to use and create symbols, is fundamentally linked to ritual and the use of objects.
Hold on, I'm trying to wrap my head around this. We're obsessed with symbols. And that's somehow tied to rituals and objects, which are essentially like early forms of media.
Exactly. Think back to the very first humans. Maybe they didn't have Instagram or podcasts, but they did have cave paintings, they had dances, and they had those special objects imbued with all the significance. These acted as media, transmitting cultural and religious ideas across generations, ultimately shaping their understanding of the world. It's this perspective that really highlights just how fundamental our relationship with objects, and by extension media, is to our development as a species.
Wow, that definitely puts things into a whole new perspective. So even from the very beginning, media had this key role in shaping our understanding of the world, including those religious beliefs.
And to really grasp this powerful relationship between media and religion, we need to appreciate how deeply rooted it is in our evolutionary history. It's even evident in the development of our brains.
Okay, so let's talk brains for a minute. How does our gray matter fit into all of this?
Well, it's not just about the size of our brains, but the development of specific areas like the subcortical regions, which are very closely linked to emotions. Research by Alexander Mariansky, for instance, has shown that, humans are deeply emotional beings. Our emotions play this really crucial role in how we connect with the world and each other.
That makes sense. And we've talked about how ritual and symbolism are so intertwined with our emotions. So are you suggesting that our brains are actually predisposed to religion because of the way they evolved alongside media?
I wouldn't say predisposed to religion specifically, but our brains are definitely wired for meaning making. And religion, with its rich symbolism, its narratives and its rituals, it offers this really powerful framework for that meaning making.
That is a fascinating perspective. So how does all of this actually play out throughout history? We've come a long way from cave paintings to, well, cat videos, right? But the ways religion and media interact must have changed quite a bit over time, haven't they?
Oh, absolutely. To really understand those shifts, we can look at the work of scholar Armin W. Geertz. He came up with this framework that helps us categorize the different ways religious communication and actions are mediated.
So we're talking about a whole spectrum of religious expression here. Give us some examples.
Well, one really compelling example is the human body itself. Think about it. Dance, gestures, postures, music, they all act as media, carrying all this religious significance. And it's not just the body. We can also consider the evolution of what's called symbolic materiality. We began with things like bark scrolls and cave paintings, but as technology advanced, so did our methods for expressing and transmitting religious ideas, moving from books to film and now to the digital world we live in.
Okay, so we've got bodies in motion, we've got sacred objects, grand cathedrals. These are all examples of how religion has utilized media throughout history. But how has this interaction actually shaped the way religion itself has evolved? Are there specific changes or shifts we can point to?
To understand that, let's go back to the work of Merlin Donald and his really fascinating theory of cognitive revolutions. He lays out these three major revolutions in human history: the mimetic, the mythic, and the theoretic. Each revolution is linked to a shift in how we actually use media, and in turn, how we experience and express our religious impulses.
Okay, so break those down for us.
Yeah.
What did these revolutions actually look like?
Well, the mimetic revolution, which Donald places as that transition from Australopithecines to the Homo lineage, it's all about developing more sophisticated control over our bodies. We became more expressive, more capable of using our bodies to communicate these really complex ideas and emotions. Just think about ritualistic dance, for example. That's a perfect example of mimetic communication.
So our bodies themselves become like a form of media, conveying religious meaning through movement and expression. What came next?
Next up is the mythic revolution, which Donald connects to the emergence of anatomically modern Homo sapiens. With language, we suddenly had this much richer and faster way to transmit knowledge, including those myths, our beliefs, and those religious narratives. We could tell stories, we could share complex ideas, and we could create the shared understanding of the world.
That's a huge leap forward. Language opens up this whole new dimension for religious expression. And finally, we get to the theoretic revolution, right?
Exactly. And this is where things get really interesting. Donald argues this revolution began about 40,000 years ago, and it was marked by the development of those external symbolic technologies. These technologies, from written language to visual art to eventually computers, allowed for the storage and transmission of abstract thought. And religion, with its complex doctrines and philosophies, really flourished in this new environment.
It's amazing to think about that journey. We've gone from expressing ourselves through movement to sharing stories through language to developing entire systems of thought through external symbols.
And this leads us to a really provocative question posed by Donald. Are we actually on the verge of a fourth revolution?
A fourth revolution. Okay, now you have my attention. What would that even look like?
Well, think about those rapid advancements in digital technology that we're seeing today. Are these advancements reshaping not just how we communicate, but how we think, how we experience the world, and how we engage with religious ideas?
It's definitely something to think about. We've already touched on how the internet and social media are changing the religious landscape.
Right, but Donald's idea, it pushes us to think even bigger. The line between the physical and the digital, it's getting increasingly blurry.
And what does that mean for religion? I'm really curious to hear your thoughts on this.
Well, for one, we're seeing religious aesthetics and imagery appearing everywhere. In movies, TV shows, video games, we're constantly bombarded with these symbols and narratives, and often they're totally removed from their traditional religious context.
That's true. I've definitely noticed how even seemingly secular media borrows a lot from religious traditions. But does this mean that we're seeing this, I don't know, religionification of society, where these symbols and narratives, combined with our inherent attraction to ritual and meaning, start to just permeate everything?
It's a fascinating possibility, and it's precisely what makes studying religion and media in the 21st century so compelling. We're witnessing this really profound shift in how we experience and express religious ideas, all fueled by these rapid technological advancements.
And it all goes back to those deep-rooted connections we've been talking about. Our brains, our evolutionary history, our cultural development, it's all been shaped by and continues to shape our relationship with media.
It's this intricate dance, and understanding that dance is key to understanding those complex ways religion functions and evolves in our world today. And this brings us back to, some of those contemporary theories we talked about earlier, like mediatization and online religion. These ideas, they become even more fascinating when we consider this long history of how religion and media have, always been intertwined.
Yeah, you're right. Seeing this historical perspective really makes me view the digital age in a new light. It's not just some isolated phenomenon. It's part of this a much larger story.
Exactly. And understanding that larger story, Well, it can help us see the nuances and complexities of these contemporary theories much more clearly. Take Jarvard's mediatization theory, for instance.
You mean that idea that religion is increasingly adapting to the logic of media?
Hmm.
I, I vaguely remember reading some critiques arguing that it was too focused on a specific type of religion, like maybe that Protestant model,
Yeah.
and that it didn't really account for all the different types of religious expression we see globally.
Yeah, that's a common critique, and a valid one for sure. But when we acknowledge that religion has always been mediated, well, it challenges us to think more broadly about what mediatization actually means. It's not just about religion conforming to one single media logic. It's about understanding that dynamic interplay between religious practices and the specific media environments, where they exist.
So how can we use this broader understanding of religion and media to make sense of what's happening in the digital age? Because it really does feel like something big is shifting right now.
It absolutely is. And that's where Dawson and Cowan's work on online religion becomes, well, really insightful. You remember that distinction they made between religion online and online religion?
Refresh my memory. It's been a
Yeah.
little while since I've looked at their work.
Of course. So, religion online. That's simply the digital presence of those established religious institutions. It's your church's website, maybe your temple's social media feed. Essentially, it's traditional religion going online. But online religion, that's something different altogether. It refers to religious communities and practices that exist only online. They're born and raised in the digital world.
So online religion is like a digital native faith existing entirely within the online world.
Right.
But this is where those tricky questions about authenticity and authority come in, right?
Yes. If a religious community only exists online, can we still say it's real religion? What makes it legitimate in a digital space?
And what about the issue of authority? If there's no clear lineage, no identifiable leader or structure, how do we evaluate the information being shared? It feels like a totally different landscape from those traditional religious institutions.
Those are some of the biggest questions that scholars are dealing with right now. And it gets even more complex when online religion intersects with popular culture.
Oh, you mean like that Game of Thrones effect?
Exactly. Think about the complex religious symbolism in a show like that. It's not directly tied to any one real-world religion, but it kind of borrows and blends elements from a bunch of different traditions.
And fans online, they don't just analyze those symbols, right?
Mhm.
They create entire communities around them. They develop their own rituals and beliefs and systems of meaning. It makes you wonder, is that religion? Is it spirituality? Is it fandom? Where do we even draw the line?
Well, what's so fascinating here is that the line itself, it's becoming more and more blurry. It's like all those categories we used to depend on are starting to dissolve in the digital age. And this takes us back to Donald's idea of that fourth cognitive revolution. Could it be that this advanced technology is fundamentally altering our relationship with the world? The way we create and experience meaning, even our very understanding of what makes something a religion.
That's a pretty wild thought. It
Yeah.
really makes you question everything you thought you knew about religion.
It certainly does, and it highlights another really crucial question. If religion has always relied on media, does that mean media itself has a kind of power? Do some types of media lend themselves more naturally to religious expression or experience?
That's a great question. We've already discussed how our brains are wired for that emotional connection. So does that mean certain media tap into that wiring more effectively than others, shaping our religious experiences in really profound ways?
Well, if we connect this back to the big picture, we have to remember that media are never truly neutral. They always shape how we see and understand the world, no matter the content.
It's true. Think about how differently you might experience a story depending on if you read it, hear it, or watch it. The medium itself really influences how you interpret it.
Exactly. And those differences can have a huge impact on how we process religious ideas, how we engage with ritual, how we even connect with that sense of the transcendent.
So a powerful film, a moving piece of music, even a well-crafted meme, all of these can uh, evoke these powerful religious feelings and experiences, even if that wasn't the original goal.
Exactly. And that's why it's so important to analyze not just what media are being used in a religious context, but how they're being used and what effects they're having on people and communities.
Okay, so we have this incredibly complex interplay between religion, media, and the human brain. Where do we even go from here? What's the next step in understanding this relationship?
Well, that's the exciting part. This field is constantly evolving. There's always new research and new insights emerging. And as technology keeps advancing at this crazy pace, well, we can expect even more dramatic shifts in the relationship between religion and media in the years to come.
I have a feeling we'll be having many more deep dives into this topic. Wow, feel like we've only just scratched the surface of this huge topic. But but if I had to summarize everything we've talked about today, I guess the main takeaway is that this relationship between religion and media isn't just some, recent thing. It's really woven into what it means to be human.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. From those ancient rituals to the digital world today, religion and media are totally connected.
And understanding that connection is really important for understanding how religion works,
Yeah.
how it changes and how it continues to shape our world.
Absolutely. Whether we're talking about a cave painting, a sacred text, a viral TikTok, or even, a virtual reality experience, media gives us the tools and the spaces to express, explore, and connect with the transcendent.
So for all of our fellow religion enthusiasts listening, we want to leave you with a final thought. Think about your own experiences with media.
How do those experiences, the stories you come across, the images you see, the online communities you're a part of, how do they shape your understanding of and your relationship with religion?
It's definitely something to think about, something to explore further. Because as we've seen today, the connection between religion and media is, well, it's much deeper and much more significant than we often realize.
And that connection, it keeps shaping our world in ways we're just beginning to understand.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into the world of religion and media. We'll catch you next time for another insightful exploration.